Now, protein is one of the most important nutrients for our body, yet a lot of people are not consuming enough of it, and especially not from healthy sources. And this is something that could have big consequences on our health if we don't get it right. In this video, I'm going to show you a very easy and simple approach for how you can know if you're getting enough protein. And to do this, we're going to discuss some of the most common healthy foods that provide us with a good source of protein, so that by the end of this video, you're going to have a nice, easy framework for how you can make sure you're eating enough protein and you're ready to go. Hey there, I'm Dr. Anna. I'm a medical doctor. I was trained in Italy. And on this channel, you are going to learn how to master your health. Okay, so let's first discuss a little bit about some basic nutrition of protein. So protein is really important because it helps us grow and repair things inside the body. We need muscle when we're a kid because our bones are growing, our muscles are growing. We need protein for building healthy joints. And believe it or not, we really need protein, especially as we age and grow older, because it helps maintain our muscle mass, which is super important for preventing problems like falls and fractures. Now, protein itself is one of the major structural components of our body. Pretty much every cell in our body is made up of protein. Everything from our hair, our skin, our nails, our bones, our organs, our eyeballs, you name it. Now, as I said, most people are not eating enough. So here's the thing. In general, when we eat food, we are eating foods that are composed of one of three, or maybe two or all three, of the major macronutrients, which are the different categories of nutrients. So these are proteins, fats, or carbs. Now, protein is sort of the one that gets the least amount of press. I'm not really sure why, but it's probably because there's so much debate about how much carbohydrate or how much fat or how much of each of those things in proportion we should be eating in a healthy diet. And to be honest, there's not a straight answer from both nutrition science and different dietary practices across the population and across the whole world. But the one thing that is common in every culture is the importance of having enough protein. So what is the amount that we're supposed to eat? Well, it's not possible for me to tell you a number without having us do a little bit of basic math. So stay with me here. I promise this is not complicated. Now, the minimum requirement that is generally used as the marker for what adult who is finished growing should consume is the following. We are going to think about what is our body weight in kilograms. Now, if you're listening to this video from the United States, you're probably used to thinking of your body weight in terms of pounds. But for this calculation, we do need to convert it to kilograms. So you have to think about what your body weight is in terms of kilograms. And what you really need to do is think about your ideal body weight. For somebody of your height, your age, and your biological sex, what is the ideal weight that your body should be? And the reason why I'm saying that is because if you are overweight or underweight, you want to make this calculation for the protein needs of your body based off of the healthy body weight. So this is going to be a range, but in general, you want to think about what is your ideal body weight and what is it in kilograms. That's where we start. Then I want you to do this math with me. Calculate 1 gram of protein for every kilogram of your ideal body weight. Let's do a really easy example. For someone who's 165 pounds, that's going to correlate to about 75 kilograms. So 75 kilos times 1 gram of protein is about 75 grams of protein. So that's the general marker that somebody should eat to make sure they're having the adequate needs. Now, the number that the US FDA uses as the cutoff point for the recommended minimum amount is 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. So recognize that 0.8 is the minimum required to not be deficient. That's not really the recommended amount for optimal health. So I like, for easier math, to just round that up to 1 because it's so much easier than thinking about what is 80% of a number. Just think of what is 100% of a number. So what does this correspond to for gram amounts of protein? Well, from our example, we could see that about 75 grams of protein would be an easy target for someone who's around 165 pounds or 75 kilos. Now, if you look at the FDA guidelines, they're going to recommend about 50 grams of protein to not be deficient. So you can already see that 50 grams to 75 grams, that's quite a bit of difference. But let's say you're not just 165 pounds or 75 kilos. What if you weigh more than that? Or what if your protein requirements are higher than that? For example, if you're an athlete and you're lifting a lot of weight, well, it's easy. You can just do the calculation, but you have to increase the number of grams per kilogram of your ideal body weight. So this is what this would look like. We're going to calculate the ideal range for yourself. What most guidelines are going to tell you is that you need, as a range, from 0.8 grams of protein for every kilogram of your ideal body weight to 1.6. Now, I don't know about you, but the numbers 0.8 and 1.6 are already making my head spin. So I think it's so much easier to just calculate from 1 to 2. You know that the 1 is going to be a pretty good target for meeting your needs, and the 2 is going to be probably above the range that you actually need to eat. So what would this look like? For somebody who's 75 kilos, that person would need to have anywhere from 75 grams to 150 grams of protein a day. Now that's a pretty wide range. And as we said, that 2 grams per kilogram of body weight is probably higher than most people need, even for athletes. But we just want to do that for simplicity's sake. So let's work backwards now. Let's say we're going to shoot for eating 100 grams of protein a day. Well, if we're eating 3 meals a day, what's that going to look like? A third, a third, a third. You could do it like that. So maybe roughly 33 grams of protein per meal. But what if you're someone who only eats 2 meals a day? Maybe you don't actually eat breakfast and you're just a lunch and dinner eater. Well, that's not that difficult. We could just take that number 100 and divide it by 2, which means at each meal, you want to target about 50 grams of protein. Are you still with me? I know that math was a lot, but I'd like you to please subscribe to this channel because I promise your subscription is going to make learning all of this material a lot easier so you can keep repeating the information. And it also helps us get these videos out to more folks who really deserve to learn this information. So now that we have some basic understanding of our nutritional requirements for protein, let's make this way more practical of a discussion. Let's get some understanding about protein foods. So thinking about protein in our diet, we have to think about what is a general serving of protein. Well, that's considered about 3 ounces of fish or meat, about 1 whole egg or 2 egg whites if you're just having the egg white. This could look like about a 1/4 cup of cooked beans or lentils, about a tablespoon of nut butter, like peanut butter or almond butter, for example, or a 1/2 ounce of whole nuts. Now, according to the American Heart Association, for adults who are finished growing, they should try to aim for getting at least 5.5 ounces of protein foods a day. What does that look like? Well, 3 ounces of a protein food, like fish or meat, for example, is about the size of a deck of cards. The other way people can describe this is, depending on the size of your hand, is about the size of the palm of your hand. So if you're looking at the palm of your hand and you think, okay, that might be 3 ounces, but I want to get to about 5.5 or 6 ounces a day, about 2 portions of fish or meat would possibly get you there. Now, you don't actually have to know how to do all the calculations for how many ounces is how many grams and how do I structure my meal plan accordingly. That is the work of a dietitian or a nutritional counselor. I'm simply trying to give you a basic understanding if you are craving that for eating healthy. So now let's say you want to understand if the meal that you typically make for yourself is giving you enough protein. Well, let's talk about putting some numbers of how many grams of protein are in some typical servings of protein-rich foods in our diet. And for this discussion, I'm going to stick with protein foods that are typical in the Mediterranean diet because I'm not trying to lead any of you astray. I want to promote the healthiest options of nutrition that we can possibly find. And we know that the Mediterranean diet is one of the healthiest approaches to eating there is. Okay, so here's some typical foods that you might be cooking in your Mediterranean approach or just your general healthy eating approach. About 1 cup of cooked beans or lentils is going to be about 18 grams of protein. About 3 or 3.5 ounces of lean chicken breast is going to be about 30 grams of protein. About 3 or 3.5 ounces of fish, maybe it's tilapia, salmon, cod, well, that's going to give us roughly 25 grams of protein. About 6 ounces of Greek yogurt, or the size of an individual cup of yogurt that you could find in a grocery store, that's going to give us about 17 grams of protein. And then a 1/4 cup of nuts or seeds. That's going to give us between 7 and 8 grams of protein. About a tablespoon of peanut butter will give us about 4 grams. 1 egg gives us about 6 grams. 2 egg whites will give us about 10 grams of protein. A 1/4 cup of crumbled feta cheese is going to give us around 5.5 grams of protein. And then a 6-ounce serving of cottage cheese is going to be around 18 grams of protein. So those are some of the most potent sources of healthy proteins in our diet. But are there other ways that we can get protein in in besides these foods? Well, that is where whole grains come into the discussion. The more whole grains we are eating in our diet, the more boosts of protein we're actually taking in. And that's because grains in their whole form often have a little bit of protein as a part of them. So let's give some examples. These are all going to be the amount of protein for 1 cup cooked of each of the following grains. Quinoa is going to give us around 8 grams. Farro is going to give us around 6.5 grams of protein. Barley is going to give us 5.5 grams of protein. Amaranth is going to give us around 9.5 grams of protein. So you get the idea. If we're incorporating more whole grains in our diet, which the Mediterranean diet emphasizes to do as much as possible, we are actually boosting up the protein level without even realizing it. So let's take this information and put it together and calculate how much protein would a classic meal on the Mediterranean diet give us. Let's take the example of a simple Mediterranean grain bowl salad. And this could be incorporating any kind of whole grain and any kind of salad vegetables that you'd want. And we're going to put it together and do a little math. So let's say, for example, that for 1 serving for yourself, you're going to include 1/2 cup of cooked whole grains. Well, let's guesstimate that this is going to be about 4 grams of protein it gives us. Let's say you wanted to incorporate then about 1/2 cup of beans. Well, this might give you around 9 grams of protein. And then maybe you want to add a little bit of crumbled feta cheese onto your salad. Well, even just 1/4 cup of crumbled feta cheese might give us about 5.5 grams of protein. So this totals it up to about 18.5 grams of protein just from those 3 ingredients in our salad. And for easy math's sake, let's say you put a little bit more than 1/2 cup of the whole grains and a little bit more than 1/2 cup of beans, and that rounds our number up to 20 grams of protein. I guess we're not doing too bad so far. But maybe you want to add a protein-rich food, a food that is specifically giving us a high amount of protein onto the salad. Maybe it's salmon, or maybe it's sardines, maybe it's chicken breast, maybe it's hard-boiled egg. What would happen if we added a very protein-rich food on top of our healthy base of a salad grain bowl? Well, for example, you might be adding an additional 10, 20, or even 30 grams of protein to that base. So if our base salad is going to be about 20 grams of protein, and then we're adding protein foods onto it, you do the math, you might be having about 30 to even 50 grams of protein just at this one meal. And if you've been following from the beginning of this video, you might realize that giving yourself 50 grams of protein at a meal, well, you're already meeting your minimum requirements to sustain your healthy weight. But additionally, you're setting yourself up to not be anywhere close to deficient. Now, I don't know about you, but that is exactly where I would want to be. Now, do you like the sound of this meal? If so, you're in luck, because I have an entire tutorial up here where I walk you through how to make an example of this Mediterranean diet green salad bowl. Jump into that video. I know you'll love it. See you in there.